Hi, I'm Peggy, founder of BouwData. This presentation introduces an alternative to the traditional progress statement based solely on materials placed. The method was first tested extensively during the construction of the AZ Sint Maarten Hospital in Mechelen between 2013 and 2018, a pioneering project in Belgium that demonstrated how earned value management can bring transparency and control to complex construction budgets. Buildwise published an article on this approach in 2017, highlighting its innovative character and practical impact. In this guest lecture, we will explain this method step by step, so that anyone with a spreadsheet can apply it in practice. No expensive software required, just clear logic, structured data, and collaboration. What is it all about and why? In a traditional building contract, the contractor sends a monthly payment request. Legally, this request goes from the contractor to the client. In practice, however, it first passes through the architects and the engineers who act as advisors. They review, comment, and sometimes spend quite some time debating before a recommendation reaches the client. This creates several issues. Advisors may spend considerable time on reviewing and approving documents, which leaves them with less room for thorough on-site quality checks. Contractors are only paid what is physically installed and accepted, so preparing well in advance is often financially punished. And the client, lacking experience, watches from the sidelines and usually follows the advisor's lead. Earned value management changes this dynamic. Advisors spend less time rechecking paperwork and more time on their true role, quality control on site. The client is more directly involved and supported by an assistant or a project controller who can manage the financial tracking in, for instance, Excel. With earned value management, payments can already start as soon as the contractor deploys staff, even off-site, not only after materials are installed. Instead of measuring only materials placed, earned value management links progress payment to the project schedule and the site diary. Falling behind on planning is automatically visible in the numbers. The result? Faster, clearer, and fairer project control, with better cash flow for contractors and better oversight for clients. Bill of quantity breakdown, why it matters. Earned value management starts in stage 4, technical design, with the contractor's preparation, continues to stage 5 with the building itself, and ends with the handover in stage 6. At the start of this job, the contractor receives a bill of quantities. In theory, every line should clearly state where the work belongs, how it must function, and how it should be executed. In practice, this is rarely the case. Sometimes you get hundreds of pages filled with numbers without context, when the schedule is poorly derived from a BIM model. Sometimes important details are missing or measured just incorrectly. For earned value management, this is not enough. Contracts need to be precise, so we know exactly what is built, where, and why. This is why each line of the bill of quantity is analyzed and, if necessary, broken down into space aspects, so the entity, the sub-project, the story, the zone, or even individual build and activity spaces, and into functional systems, the system the item belongs to, such as structure, facade, or climate control. For example, Article number 22.13.62.21, glued masonry in aerated concrete blocks, thickness 15 cm, has a quantity of 74.35 square meters with a price of €90 per square meter. It is spread over 3 entities, a hub, an annex, and poly. Furthermore, a part of it is load-bearing, whilst another part is non-load-bearing because it's above roof level. Therefore, the bill of quantity breakdown results in a first line for the entity hub, belonging to the functional system roof finish for 13.24 square meters. The second line belongs to entity 2 annex, having the same functional system, namely roof finish, for 6.40 square meters. And then the third line the masonry belongs to the entity poly. And it is load bearing, so it belongs to the functional system structure for 54.71 square meters. Yes, this makes the bill of quantities much longer, sometimes thousands of lines, but in a digital age, even with Excel alone, it is worth the effort. Why? Because it produces reliable data for everyone involved, from the site team to the client's board of directors, who started just with a beer coaster budget and now need solid figures to approve the project, to the person who assists individual buyers with the choice of kitchen, sanitary appliance, tiles, flooring, etc. With earned value management, the bill of quantity becomes not just a list of numbers, but a structured knowledge base. It supports fair payments during the project, and it also delivers cost benchmarks that can be reused in future projects. Work results. What are they? Work results are viewed entirely from a procurement perspective. In other words, we speak the same language as the people sending out price requests and signing contracts with suppliers and subcontractors. Within the BouwData classification system, this step corresponds to agreement set number 3, material. Several standards were tested, but in practice the Dutch STABU 2 specification proved to be the most workable. An Excel version can be downloaded from the Academy section on our website BouwData.net. Within this AS3 material facet, there is a natural breakdown from coarse to fine. The more work results you define, the more administration you create, but also the more you learn for future projects. Remember, earned value management is a form of budget control with post-calculation in mind. In reality, you'll mix different levels of detail. For some subjects, you'll stay quite general. For others, you'll go into much more finer detail, often combining STABU 2 chapters, paragraphs, and material codes. It's all about finding the right balance between efficiency today and knowledge for tomorrow. Work results. How do you define them? The first work result concerns work preparation. The code is 05.33.WP. After the tender stage, the project moves from the estimator's desk to the execution team. These are two different worlds inside the contractor's organization. The estimator's job is to find a balance between ignoring possible risks and keeping the offer competitive enough to win the contract. If you stay too long on site, you lose that ability. You become too aware of every uncertainty and you never win a project again. That's human nature. An algorithm would call it irrational, but that's how people work. So once the contract is signed, a new team takes over. They need to get familiar with the project and decide how they are going to build it. Will they use prefabrication or not? What will the phasing look like? Will the work be done with their own crew or with subcontractors? Do they need to use their own BIM model? And they start negotiating and signing contracts with suppliers and subcontractors. This whole set of activities, that is what we call work preparation. In a traditional contract, the contractor is not paid for this work because nothing is physically delivered or installed yet. Under earned value management, however, payment starts as soon as staff is deployed. That's exactly the case here. The first discussion after signing the contract is therefore very concrete. How big is the team doing the preparatory work? How long will it take? And what average monthly rate do we agree on? For example, 3 people for 1 month at 10,000 euro per month is 30,000 euro. Normally, there is no separate item for work preparation in the bill of quantities. So we take this amount and extract it from the bill of quantity items that do exist, but only from those with a global price or a forfaitary quantity. We don't touch items with provisional quantities because those are often reserve items and may never be executed. Otherwise, we end up with an accounting nightmare at the end of the project. Suppose the total of all bill of quantity items at the global price is 1 million euros. The agreed 30,000 euros for work preparation represents 3% of that total. We therefore divide each forfaitary article of the bill of quantity into 3% grouped under the work result work preparation and the remaining 97%. The second work result is project management with code 05.33.pm. This phase runs in parallel with the execution of works and is just as essential as work preparation. In a traditional contract, there is no separate payment for project management. Since nothing tangible is delivered or installed, it's simply considered part of the contractor's overhead. Yet, good on-site management is of enormous value. It's what keeps the project running safely, efficiently, and within budget. Under earned value management, this work is recognized and paid for. After the contract is signed, you sit together with the contractor and define how many people will manage the site, for how many months, and at what average monthly rate. Continuing our previous example, let's assume the contractor provides one full-time equivalent for 5 months at 10,000 euros per month. That makes a total of 50,000 euros or 5% of the total bill of quantity value of 1 million. We therefore divide each forfaitary article of the bill of quantities proportionally. 3% is grouped under the first work result, work preparation. An additional 5% is grouped under the work result project management, and then there's the remaining 92%. The third work result is site facilities with code 05.sf. Sometimes the bill of quantities includes explicit items for site facilities that have to be priced one by one. In other cases, it's a single lump sum item. It's important to realize that a contractor rarely includes the full real cost of these facilities. There are 2 reasons for that. First, other project partners often have a fixed idea that site facilities should equal about 10% of the other bill of quantity items. Secondly, when changes occur, there's usually little willingness to accept that this also affects work preparation and project management. To avoid endless discussions, the contractor will therefore hide part of the site facility cost inside the production prices. Since the expenses for work preparation and project management have already been skimmed off from the forfaitary articles in the bill of quantities, the articles of the bill of quantities concerning site facilities will generally be sufficient to cover these work results. Continuing our example. Assume that the articles of the bill of quantities concerning site facilities equals 180,000 euros. After subtracting 30,000 euros for the work preparation and 50,000 euro for the project management, we still have 100,000 euros left for site facilities. This amount is divided into 3 parts. A first part, the one-off cost at the start, for instance 12,500 euros for setting up the site. A second part, time-related costs, for instance 15,000 euros per month during the same 5 months period as on-site project management. And then a third one, a one-off cost at the end, for instance 12,500 for dismantling and clearing the site. Off-site and on-site production. Now we can focus on the actual production. We'll continue with the example used in the bill of quantities breakdown. So article number 22, 13, 62, 21, glued masonry in aerated concrete blocks, thickness 15 centimeters, with a total quantity of 74.35 square meters at a price of 90 euros per square meter. Its bill of quantity breakdown resulted in a first line for the entity hub for the functional system roof finish for 13.24 square meters, a second line for the entity annex for the same functional system roof finish for 6.40 square meters, and then a third line for the entity poly for the functional system structure for 54.71 square meters. In earned value management, it's not necessary to keep this level of detail when defining the work results. On a real site, things rarely go perfectly according to plan. And luckily, site workers are flexible enough to switch tasks when needed. Our administration should never block that flexibility. The rule is simple. Work results are defined based on subcontractors or in-house teams. For example, if Team 1 performs masonry works for the entity hub, so for the entity 1 hub and for the entity 2 annex, and Team 2 works on the entity 3 poly, then 2 separate work results must be created. In this case, the split also happens to correspond with the difference between the two functional systems, roof finish and structure. But that's not a requirement. The only criterion is which team or subcontractor executes the work. Through the bill of quantity, we can always track back to the relevant functional system or space aspect. Usually, several bill of quantity items can be grouped under the same heading. In this case, masonry. Let's say the total amount for all masonry-related items is 95,000 euros. If we select only the entity 1 hub and the entity 2 annex, and we select also the functional system roof finish, we get 25,000 euro for Team 1. From this, 3%, which is 750 euros, has already been schemed off for work preparation, and 5%, which is 1,250 euros, is schemed off for the work result project management. That leaves 23,000 for the actual production from masonry for Team 1. So the work result, 22,1 masonry Team 1. The remaining amount for Team 2, who is working on entity 3 poly for the functional system structure, is 95,000 euro minus 25,000 euro is 70,000 euro. From this, 3%, which is 2,100 euro, has been deducted for work preparation, 5%, which is 3,500 euros for project management, leaving 64,400 euro for actual production for the masonry for Team 2. And one needs to continue this for all remaining articles in the bill of quantity. Work results making a financial forecast. So far, we defined in our example following work results. We had work preparation at a total cost of 30,000 euros, lasting 3 months. We had, secondly, project management at a total cost of 50,000 euros, lasting 5 months. Then we have site facilities, one-off cost at the start, at a total cost of 12,500, which will be paid at the start of the 5-month period of project management. The fourth work result is site facilities time-related cost at a cost of 15,000 euros per month, which will be paid during the 5 months of project management. And then the fifth one that we already had was site facilities one-off cost at the end at a total cost of 12,500 euros at the end of the 5-month period of project management. And of all the actual production, we only defined the masonry. We had a first work result 22_1 for the masonry Team 1 at a total cost of 23,000 euros. The contractor needs to indicate how many working days he will need for Team 1 and when he is planning to start the job. For instance, 7 working days starting at the beginning of month 2 of the works on site, so month 3 if you count the preparation period as well. This means 23,000 total cost divided by 7 working days is 3,285.71 euros for each day worked and noted in the site diary. Then we have the second team for the masonry. So that's work result 22_2, masonry Team 2, at a total cost of 64,400 euros. The contractor needs to indicate how many working days he will need for Team 2 and when he's planning to start the job. For instance, 20 working days starting at the beginning of month 2 of the works on site. So this is month 3 if you count the work preparation period as well. This means 64,400 euros, the total cost, divided by 20 working days is 3,220 euros for each day worked and noted in the site diary. To make a financial forecast, all production work results need to be defined, but what we established so far is enough to show the methodology. A financial forecast is actually a graph, with on the x-axis time and on the y-axis cost. A spreadsheet software as Microsoft Excel will easily do the job. To make things clear, I used the standard Microsoft cell styles. One point of attention, since we didn't finish the whole bill of quantities, we'll suppose that the remaining cost can be equally divided over 5 months, with in each month 18 working days, so it's 90 working days in total. Needless to say that this shortcut is absolutely not preferable, because then the whole exercise loses its purpose and will become a meaningless administrative burden. First, you make a table like the one you see on the screen right now. Next, we will set this out in time to see what is when due. To keep it visible, you have to imagine the picture you see now next to the one you saw previously. The final thing to do is to put this in a graph, like you see here. Understanding the 3 curves in the value tracking graph. At this stage, the red line in our graph represents the planned value, the financial forecast agreed upon before any work starts on site. Once the contractor reviews this planning in detail, adjustments may be made, combining or splitting work results or recalculating durations. These updates generate a blue line, the earned value, originally named the value of work earned in early project control methods. It represents the corrected forecast, showing the contractor's revised plan and the expected value of the work before execution starts. During construction, we then compare this with reality. The green line shows the actual value, based on the number of working days effectively recorded in the site diary. If the green line drops under the blue line, it means the contractor has needed more time than planned. The client has pre-financed part of the work. If it stays on top of the blue line, the contractor has managed the work efficiently. The difference between the red and the blue lines reflects evolving understanding, external and factual. The difference between the blue and the green, however, reflects internal performance, the contractor's own control over the work. This simple visual comparison often has more impact than any spreadsheet or formal discussion. RFCs, or request for change. Quantity types in a bill of quantities. Before we look at how earned value management handles changes, we need to clarify a few definitions, because not all quantities and changes are the same. The tender amount is the price submitted during the bid stage, based on the original tender documents and any clarifying addenda. In Belgium, architects provide a bill of quantities with quantities derived from models or measured manually by the design team. We need to distinguish 3 types of quantities. Provisional quantities, in Dutch VH, are estimated amounts. A final settlement is always required at the end of the works because the quantities in the bill of quantities are only indicative. Lump sum quantities, in Dutch FH, have predefined quantities listed in the bill of quantities. The contractor checks them before tendering, and when no changes are made, no settlement takes place at the end of the project. And then we have one-off costs, in Dutch totaalprijs of globale prijs, refer to work that has a single total price, independent of quantities. Payment occurs once the task is completed. The baseline includes all corrections and optimizations made between the tender and the final contract. These are not considered changes yet. They simply ensure that the signed contract reflects the agreed scope and correct quantities. RFC types. Everything that happens after the contract is signed is handled as a request for change, abbreviated RFC. Within earned value management, we distinguish 3 types of RFCs. Type A, adjustment related to provisional quantity-based items in the bill of quantities. Type B, further optimizations or corrections found after signing, initiated by the joint work of designers and contractors. And Type C, changes of the program of requirements initiated by the client. Organization impact. The later a request for change is introduced, the higher its indirect cost becomes. Within the BouwData method, we use a simple identification system to express this. An RFC with an ID the number starts with 0, it means that there was no extra cost for work preparation or project management. These changes occur early in the preparation phase before any on-site work starts. A request of change with an ID starting with a 1. Some adjustments in work preparation are needed, but the project management on site is not yet affected because the related work results have not started yet. Request for change ID starting with a 2. Both the work preparation and the project management need to rework parts of their planning as the affected work results have already begun on site, but the request of change can still be realized within the overall project duration. And then we have a final one, a request for change with an ID starting with a 3. This kind of change comes so late that it also affects the total execution period. In this case, additional site facilities time-related costs, so the work results with the code 05.sftrc, these kind of costs will be required to cover the extended site duration. This coding system makes it immediately visible how much organizational impact a change has, even before you estimate the material or labor cost itself. So consider RFCs as ticket numbers used in help desks. Whenever a potential change arises, make a unique RFC ID and make sure your spreadsheet can be filtered as follows. Make sure your spreadsheet allows filtering by the contractor involved. So if a request for change will be executed by several contractors, they each receive a different number. The contractor will probably have added his own ID, so an extra conversion column might come in handy. The type of RFC, A, B, or C. The organizational impact, so the first number of the ID, a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3. Then the work results involved, because it's possible that a request for change is related to existing work results. But when multiple work results are involved, the RFC ID needs to be divided into an A, B, C, and so forth index. The folder on the CDE, where the related information is collected and shared. It is useful to collect them per work result. In this case, at the handover of a work result, every RFC is easily found. And then we have the status. The first is awaiting a quotation. The contractor has been asked to submit a quotation, no offer received yet. The second, quotation under review. A first or a revised quotation has been received. It's being checked for scope and price. Status 3, when the quotation is rejected, the offer was not accepted, needs to be revised, so the process returns to step 1 and the contractor has to make another quotation. Step 4, quotation approved. The offer has been accepted and change is formally approved. 5, executed and verified on site. The change has been carried out on site, verified by the design teams involved. And 6, invoiced. The approved and verified request for change has been invoiced. And there's the 7th possibility that the request for change has been withdrawn. No further action or payment is required. Earned value. Let's continue with our example in entity 3, poly, where 54.71 square meters of glued aerated concrete blocks, 15 centimeters thick, were originally planned at a unit rate of 90 euros per square meter. Let's say that during the month of work preparation, the contractor and design team decide to optimize this part of the works. So this becomes request for change, a type B because it comes from the design team and the contractor, a 0 because it's very early stage, and it has the ID 1 at the end. They agree to execute 45 square meters of this wall in calcium silicate blocks of the same thickness, which can be executed at €80 per square meter. This optimization will be carried out by a third masonry team, scheduled in the third month on site, which corresponds to month 4, when counting from the start of work preparation. This means that there will be an additional work result, namely 22_3 for the masonry team 3, and the work result 22_2 from the masonry team 2 will have, let's say, 4 days less work, since the calcium silicate blocks can be placed faster than the glued aerated concrete blocks. Because this decision was taken at the very start of the work preparation, no additional cost for work preparation or project management is required. Everything can still be integrated smoothly in the planning and execution. This needs to be integrated in the spreadsheet leading up to value tracking graph. It's important not to overwrite the planned value, but note the changes in separate sheets or columns so that the graph shows the planned value as well as the newly created earned value. As you can see on the screen, this request for change makes that the planned value goes from 1 million and it drops to the earned value of 999,550. Since the difference is very small, it barely shows in the graph, but over time, when there are more RFCs or just plain insights that causes changes in work results, you'll see the difference. Progress payment. Site diary. In Belgium, the site diary is a legally required document. In case of dispute, it is consulted in court, and entering false information is considered forgery. Yet, on most sites today, the diary is either incomplete or not maintained at all. Within earned value management, we want to revitalize this practice. After all, even in shipping, captains still keep a logbook, so why shouldn't construction sites do the same thing? Each day, the site diary must record 2 simple things. 1, whether it was a working day or not, and 2, if so, which work results were executed that day. To make this task easier for the site manager, who often sees computer work as a distraction, it is best to provide a spreadsheet template with a drop-down list of all defined work results and a relation table linking each work result to a specific crew or subcontractor. If 2 subcontractors are working on the same type of activity, the work result must be split accordingly. This way, the template reflects the real site organization and requires almost no extra effort from the site manager. Of course, all site diaries can be stored on the Common Data Environment, the CDE, where they remain part of the official project documentation. Monthly statement. Let's now calculate the progress payment for month 3. For project management and site facilities, the time-related cost, there is no discussion needed. These are fixed monthly amounts established in the financial forecast. Since a large number of bill of quantity items were no further detailed in this example, we simply take the 18 working days registered in the site diary at a total value of 158,520. That leaves us with 2 work results to verify. The first one is for the masonry team 1 with the code 22_1. According to the forecast, the team was expected to work 7 days on masonry in the entities 1 hub and in entity 2 annex. However, the site diary shows 10 working days. This means 3 days more than planned, something we will review later during the closeout. For now, we assume that 95% of the days recorded are valid, since the site diary is a legal document. We hold back the remaining 5% until final verification. Rounded down, the 95% of the 7 days means 6 working days are accepted for payment. It is important to note that if additional work on this work result appears in the next month, those extra days must be added to the 10 already recorded. So the total remains consistent for the closeout and the actual value. The second work result, which needs to be reviewed, is the one for masonry team 2 with the code 22_2. Here, 16 working days were registered in the site diary. No additional work was planned for in the following month, so the same 95% rule applies. Rounded down, we approve 15 working days for payment. The result is the progress payment for month 3 based on the verified site diary entries and the agreed financial forecast, with a small percentage held back for control during closeout. Closeout. Example, request for change, type C, 3001. Near the end of the project, just before handover, the client decides to add an extra non-bearing 10 square meter wall in the entity 3 poly. Build, include aerated concrete blocks. Because this decision comes from the client, it is an RFC type C, and since it occurs at the very end, it is coded RFCC 3001. So a 3xxx change that extends the project duration. The calculation of it consists of 4 steps. The first is the work preparation. Let's say 1 extra day to adjust the BIM model, contact the subcontractor and plan the task. So the work preparation is 30,000 euro in total, divided by the 20 working days provided. So it's 1,500 euros per day for a 3-person team. So, but only 1 person is needed, so we divide again by 3, so we come to 500 euro for work preparation for this request for change. The second one is project management. Let's say 1 extra day on site for coordination and verification. So we have a monthly cost for project management of 10,000 euro. We divide this by 20 working days, so it's 500 euro for that 1 extra day. Then the total period will be extended. So we also have the work result site facilities with the time-related cost. The site will need to be open for 1 extra day. So this is 3,000 euros divided by 20 working days is 150 euro extra. And then the fourth is the actual production. So the 10 square meters, it needs to be built include aerated concrete blocks. So that's an item in the bill of quantity. So we know the price per square meter, which is 90 euros per square meter. So this is for the actual production, 900 euros. So the total cost of this request for change from the client at the very end of the project is 500 euros for the work preparation, 500 euros for project management, 150 euros for extended site facilities, and 900 euros for the work itself, so 2,050 euro. If the client had requested this all at the start, the cost would have been only the 900 euros. Now it's 125% more, not because of the materials, but because of time and organization. Lesson learned? When late changes aren't recognized for their real impact, conflict follows. Earned value management makes that impact transparent for everyone. Note that on top of what is strict necessary for earned value management, each line in this request for change is also linked to the corresponding functional system and space aspects, allowing a proper post calculation and the knowledge transfer to future projects. Rather than ignoring lessons learned after tendering, BouwData captures them as structured input for the next design phase. For the actual closeout, we will focus only on the 3 masonry work results from our example. The work results with a fixed monthly cost, such as work preparation, project management, and site facilities, the time-related costs, required no closeout, since they were defined in the financial forecast and paid monthly. Any additional work for these items can only result from a request for change, as we already demonstrated in the RFCC 3001. Monthly statement in month 6. As for the remaining bill of quantity items that were not developed in detail, these were distributed evenly over the 90 working days in the financial forecast. However, in month 6, We no longer pay the full 18 working days, but applying the same 95% rule used throughout this whole project. So we have 18 working days minus 5% of 90 working days is 13 working days. This adjustment reflects the final retention until verification during closeout. Then we have the closeout of the work result 22_1, so the masonry for team 1. 1 working day was retained at the value of 3,285.71 euros. The team actually spent 10 working days on this task instead of 7 planned. However, since all the work was carried out within the same month, the client did not pre-finance the contractor, quite the opposite. If we had known from the start that the team would lead 10 days, the financial forecast would have included 10 days multiplied by 95% of this 9 working days paid at the daily rate of the 23,000 divided by the 10, not the 7. So that's 2,300 euros retained until the quality of work was confirmed. In this case, the retention even benefits the client because it was bigger. But in larger work results, where activities stretch over several months, the situation is different. The client often pre-finances the work because in the early months, before applying the 95% rule, the paid daily rate is higher than it should be based on the actual progress. This example shows how the 95% rule balances trust and control, protecting the client without starving the contractor's cash flow. Then we have the closeout of the work result 22_2 for the masonry team 2. For this work result, the planned value was 64,400 euros spread over 20 working days. After the request for change type B, the number 1, the earned value management was adjusted to 60,350 euros spread over 16 working days, or 3,771.88 euro per working day. This work was executed in month 3, but according to the 95% rule, only 15 working days were paid during that month. So this one remaining day were 3,771.88 euros is held back until all related works on site have been verified and accepted by all parties involved. So that was a closeout for work result for the masonry team 2. Closeout of RFCs. We had 2 RFCs, a type B and a type C. A type B at the very early stage. That was an optimization that was announced very well in advance. It was translated into a separate work result, namely masonry team 3, executed smoothly and within the planned period. Because the change was fully integrated during work preparation, only production costs had to be paid. It was completed, verified and paid in month 4, so at closeout there's nothing left to be settled. The situation is quite different for our request for change type C, which came at the very, very end, so which has number 3000, which has ID 3001. This late client change was requested after the planned execution period and therefore cost 125% more than it would have costed if decided together with the request for change type B. So it will only be settled after on-site verification by the design team and the client during the final closeout. Conclusion. Throughout this lecture, we've seen how earned value management brings clarity, but also how fragile that clarity can be. In our example, a single late client decision, the RFC C3001, turned an otherwise well-managed process into a less efficient one. It's a situation we see far too often. Projects that run smoothly until last-minute changes disrupt planning, coordination, and trust. This is not a negative conclusion. It's an encouragement to clients. In a digital world, transparency is not optional. Structured preparation and timely decisions are the foundation of every successful project. So let's stop flying in at last minute with new demands under the pretext new insights. Such changes belong to the operation phase, where continuous improvement truly makes sense. That's the real message of earned value management and of the BouwData methodology behind it. Think earlier, decide earlier, and share knowledge transparently. Thank you.